Settle into the hush of this gentle night. Let your shoulders drop, your breath soften. Let the quiet cradle you. You are safe here. This is a place of warmth and slowness, of whispered moments and tender stillness. Tonight we'll drift through a story woven from ticking clocks, midnight lullabies, and the kind of love that doesn't shout, only hums softly through time. This is the tale of the clockmaker's song at midnight. A dreamy, slow blooming romance where time is not something to chase, but something to listen to. Let it carry you gently as we begin. Elias lived on the edge of a quiet village, in a shop where the walls hummed with the ticking of time. Wooden shelves held clocks of every kind, tall grandfather clocks with brass pendulums, tiny porcelain travel clocks, pocket watches in velvet-lined drawers. They ticked in harmony, each with its own heartbeat. And Elias, a man with silver-dusted hair and calloused fingertips, cared for them all. Each morning he would rise with the sun and brush dust from the glass faces. He would listen to the tick of each one, adjusting, winding, coaxing them into perfect rhythm. Time to Elias wasn't something to fear or rush. It was something to tend to gently. But every evening, as the village hushed into twilight and the light grew golden through the frosted windows, a soft quiet would settle over him. Not sadness, not loneliness, just a wondering, a hush within. His chest, he had lived this life for years, unchanged, the same streets, the same rhythms, the same shop bell that tinkled when someone passed. And yet, sometimes he would stand before the largest clock, a towering mahogany piece with golden hands, and he would wait, as if expecting something, as if some part of him remembered a song he had never heard. And then, one night, it happened. It was just past midnight. The clocks had all been wound, the tools carefully put away, the lamps were low, and Elias had fallen asleep in his armchair, an old linen blanket draped over his knees. The tick-tick of the clocks was steady, like the rustle of rain on glass. But then, from somewhere deep in the shop, a sound began, a song, soft, slow, a lullaby. It was not mechanical. No gear he had ever adjusted made a sound like that. It was music, a single melody that floated through the room like mist, threading between the ticking and the shadows, notes that felt familiar, like they'd been waiting. Elias sat up slowly, heart fluttering in his chest, not from fear, from recognition. He stood, the blanket slipping to the floor. The song continued. He followed it, past the counters, past the shelves, to the back wall where an old, forgotten mantel clock sat silent for years. But now its little glass door was open, and from within, the song, he placed a hand over the clock's face. It wasn't warm, it wasn't glowing, it was just playing. The melody curled around him, slow and low. Something about it made his eyes sting, not with sadness, but something deeper, a memory that never quite was, a dream he could almost remember. When the song ended, the silence felt fuller somehow, more still. Elias stood in the hush for a long time. Then he whispered to the empty shop, "Where did you come from?" The clock didn't answer, but far away in the folds of night, a breeze shifted. And in another room, not in this village, not in this time, a woman turned in her sleep and smiled. In the days that followed, Elias could not forget the song. Each night, just before the stroke of 12, he would sit beside the mantel clock, the one that had remained silent for so long, and wait. He didn't expect it to happen again. He didn't tell anyone. He simply waited in the soft hush of his workshop, beneath the glow of a low lamp, the walls filled with ticking like 1,000 whispers. And then it played again, midnight, exactly the same melody, the same gentle rise and fall, a lullaby. made of hush and hush alone. But this time, it sounded closer. It didn't feel like it was coming from the clock. Not entirely. It felt everywhere, in the warmth of the wood panels, in the faint scent of brass and pine. In the delicate shift of the night wind outside. It wrapped around him like a memory trying to take form. And so, one evening, Elias did something he rarely did. He left his shop after dark. The village was quiet, as it always was by then. Most windows were shuttered, the hearth slow. But Elias walked the stone streets with purpose, guided not by direction, but by sound. The melody had grown more distant, not gone, but moving, drawing him. He passed the old fountain in the square, its water frozen mid-trickle. He passed the bakery, its scent long faded into the cold. He passed lamplight flickering against frost-dusted windows. The ticking of his pocket watch steadied him, a metronome for his footsteps. Tick, tick, step, tick, tick, breath. And then he saw it, tucked into an alleyway he had never noticed before, though he had lived in the village for decades. A narrow iron gate stood open, the shadows beyond it soft and warm. It didn't feel like night. It felt like a dream of night. He stepped through. The alley was lined with clock faces not attached to anything, just resting along the stone walls like paintings. Some were cracked, others pristine. Some ticked, others hummed. The ground was layered with soft gear-shaped leaves that didn't crunch, only whispered beneath his boots. The end of the alley, aglow. Dim, golden, the color of candlelight filtered through parchment. A door, wooden, curved at the top like an old violin. No sign above it, no window, just a handle shaped like a crescent moon. Elias reached for it slowly, as though afraid it might vanish if he moved too quickly. When his fingers touched the handle, a soft chime rang out. Not loud, just one note, clear, like a greeting. He stepped inside. The room was unlike any workshop he had seen. It was long and circular, like the inside of a music box. Clocks were everywhere, hanging from beams, floating gently mid-air. Nested inside open books, they ticked in layered harmony, like a lullaby still forming itself. And at the center, a single chair, empty, waiting. The melody began again, not from the walls, from somewhere behind the curtain at the back of the room. A voice, a humming voice, low, gentle, familiar, like someone remembering him. He did not speak. He did not call out. He simply listened the way you listen to wind moving through wheat or waves folding into shore, the way you listen when you're not sure whether you're waking or dreaming, and in the world beyond, in a home filled with sheet music and silence. A woman placed a hand to her heart, unsure why it felt so full. The clocks around Elias slowed, the humming faded, and he whispered, to no one at all, I've been waiting. The next evening, Elias returned. He didn't question how he found the hidden alley again. Some part of him already knew the path by heart, as though he had walked it in dreams long before his feet ever touched the stone. The iron gate opened with a soft creak, the gear leaves brushed against his boots like memory, and the clocks lining the walls seemed to tick in greeting, familiar, welcoming. Inside the circular shop, nothing had changed. The clocks hovered and hummed, the chair still waited at the center, and the curtain at the back remained drawn, motionless. But something felt different. There was warmth in the room now, not from fire or sun, but from presence, the way a room feels when someone has just left it, or is about to arrive. Elias stood, hands tucked behind his back, eyes fixed on the curtain, and then it stirred. The fabric swayed gently, as if brushed by a passing breeze, and a moment later she stepped through. She was quiet, unhurried. as if walking into a place she'd already been. Her dress was simple, the color of faded parchment. Her hair was gathered loosely, a few wisps catching the candlelight like gold. But it was her eyes that held him, soft, steady, and surprised in a way that felt familiar. Neither of them spoke, not at first. The clock ticked around them like rain on rooftops. And then she smiled. "I wondered if you'd find your way here," she said, voice hushed, like the last line of a lullaby. Elias nodded slowly. I followed the music. She tilted her head, amused but quiet, as though she had heard that answer before. It only plays for those who've been listening. For a very long time, I think I've been listening. All my life, he said, the words leaving him before he could weigh them. She stepped closer, her shoes making no sound on the wood. You fixed clocks, she said, more to herself than to him. And I made them sing. You, he began, but the question fell away, because she turned and with the soft motion of her hand, lifted the lid on a small wooden box beside her. Inside was a collection of tiny gears and crystals like pieces of stars caught in clockwork, and as she wound a key into the side, the melody began again. The same one, the midnight tune, the lullaby that had led him here, and then she began to hum. The sound filled the room, not louder, but deeper, fuller, as if it belonged here, as if it had always belonged to her. Elias stepped closer, not speaking, just listening. When the song ended, the silence between them was not empty. It was warm, soft, waiting. She looked up at him, her voice barely more than breath. I've dreamed of you, she whispered. Not your face, not your name, just the way you listen. Elias's eyes softened, and I've waited for someone who remembered the world this slowly. They stood in that hush for a long while, not touching, not naming what this was, just breathing in the same rhythm, like two pendulums finally aligned. And as the clock ticked gently around them, the moment stretched, not forward, not back, just here. In the nights that followed, Elias returned, always at midnight, always through the hidden gate, past the alley of whispering clocks and into the warm, circular room where time did not press forward but curled softly inward. She was always there, sometimes humming, sometimes rearranging tiny gears with the careful touch of someone who loved quiet things. And Elias, he never rushed. He never asked her name. He simply sat in the second chair she had placed beside her work table and listened. It was a kind of closeness neither of them had known, not in this world, not in any. The kind that required no history, only presence, only breath. They spoke now and then, not about the past, not about the future, just the small moments between. Why do your clocks float? Elias asked one evening, watching a delicate golden timepiece hover above a spool of silver thread. She smiled, gently winding a tiny gear, because dreams don't care much for gravity, and this shop was built by forgotten songs, she said simply, as though the answer had always been there. They shared tea from mismatched cups, always warm, always steeped in herbs that smelled of moonlight and rain. Sometimes she read old poems aloud, her voice barely above the ticking. Sometimes they sat in silence, the clocks keeping time while they simply were. But one night, as a soft fog curled through the streets beyond the gate, she turned to him and said, I think I knew you before. Elias looked at her, not startled, just still. I think, she continued, her eyes reflecting the quiet candlelight, we've met somewhere I can't quite name, a place just outside of sleep, just past the hour when dreams begin. He nodded. Slowly, I felt it too, like your voice has lived beneath every chime I've ever heard. She reached into a drawer, pulling out a small clock face, no hands, no numbers, just a circle of glass. I made this, she said, before I knew why. I think it was waiting. For you. Elias took it in his palms, warm from her touch. Light as breath, he didn't speak, only held it as if it might play the melody again. She watched him, then said softly, "The song only plays at midnight, because that's when time forgets itself, and in forgetting remembers love." He looked up at her, heart slow and steady. "Then maybe I've remembered you for far longer than I've known." The air between them pulsed, not with tension, but tenderness. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't step closer. But in that hush, something passed between them, not a promise, not a question, just a recognition, like two clocks ticking. In perfect time, the hours they spent together began to soften the edges of time. And no longer did Elias count days in sunrises and chores, or by the winding of village clocks. He measured them now in silences shared and melodies remembered, in the way she looked up from her work just as he entered, as though the moment had always been waiting for him to arrive. In the dreamlike shop where clocks floated in candlelight shimmered like slow water, they moved together in quiet rhythm. He would sit at the table, repairing an old brass pocket watch with steady hands. She would sort through glimmering cogs and whisper to the clocks when they grew restless. Sometimes they swapped tools. Sometimes they swapped stories, not of their lives, but of their feelings, in soft metaphors and sleepy truths. I used to believe time was something I had to chase, Elias murmured one night, threading a spring into place. But now I think, maybe it's something that waits for us, right here. She nodded, brushing her fingers along the curve of a music box. Time is a room, she whispered, and love is the hush that fills it. They didn't speak often. Of what they were becoming, only lived it, one silent breath at a time. One evening, as the clock ticked low and the air shimmered with stillness, Elias looked at her for a long moment. She was resting, her head tilted back, eyes closed, a faint smile on her lips like someone listening to the stars. He rose without a word and wound the oldest music clock by hand. It clicked once and began to play. She opened her eyes slowly. The lullaby floated between them again, familiar and whole. But this time it wasn't just the song, it was the silence around it. The way she looked at him with such steady softness, as if every second held a secret only they shared. He walked to her side. She didn't move. And in the golden hush of candlelight and music, he reached out, not boldly, not dramatically, just gently, slowly, and touched her hand, fingers resting lightly, no grasp. Just presence. She turned her palm to meet his. Neither spoke. The clock ticked on. The song continued. And in that stillness, they both understood something, not with words, not with promises, but with the easy calm of two souls that had, without even trying, become a home to one another. And no rush, no need to name it, only a shared breath in the warm quiet of a midnight that never needed to end. The days no longer had names. The nights no longer marked time. Elias still rose each morning, still tended his village clocks, winding, dusting, adjusting them with care. But there was a difference now, a softness in his movements, a quiet smile that lingered just beneath. His expression, like the last glow of a lantern left burning through dusk, and when midnight came, he would return to the alley of gears and stillness, through the gate that never rusted, through the street that never forgot, to the place where the song still played, always waiting. She would be there. Sometimes she was already humming. Sometimes she was quiet, watching the candlelight flicker through her tea. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they simply sat. But always the moment stretched safe, unbroken. On the final evening of this story, the clocks seemed especially calm. Their ticking slowed to a gentle lull. The air was warm, the kind of warmth that settles over you like a shawl pulled close, and the sky outside was dusted with stars, slow moving and drowsy, as if they too had been listening, Elias and the woman, still unnamed. As if names were too loud for this, sat beside one another in the circle of the dream shop. "I think the song is complete now," she whispered. He nodded. "It's been complete since you first hummed it." She turned to him, her hand resting softly over his. "Do you think this place will disappear once we sleep?" "No," he said. "I think it will become the dream." Her eyes fluttered closed. His followed soon after, and the clocks, one by one, fell silent, not with a stop, but with a rest. Like music that finishes on a breath, not a note, the song played just once more. Soft, slow, whole.it moved through the room, through the gears and hands, through the shelves and beams, through the space between two joined palms. Then it faded, not into silence, but into stillness. Outside, the stars blinked slower now. The village slept. The alley hid itself in shadow once more, and within the dream shop, time rested. The clocks rested, the lovers, if you could call them that, and you could rest it to no goodbyes. No ends, just one final hush, and a love that ticked on quietly. Long after the clocks had gone still. Thank you for listening. You may let go now. Let your own breath fall soft. Let your eyes drift closed. The melody is quiet. The night is kind. And love, like time, waits gently for you. Good night.